Introducing a brand new soccer show that's a little bit different.
Right? What is Real Francamente? It's a vibe. Francamente is the perfect word. It means frankly. It means honest. It is everything I am. It has my name in it. Boom. We're going with that. There's also a linguistic kind of double entendre pun with real. It's unapologetically feminine. It's unapologetically in your face, cute, glittery, sparkly. Football is a religion. I am imploring you to bias your football content. For the rest of the time you listen to this podcast, radical, revolutionary, all those words are good words. The content is serious, it's intellectual, it's historical, and sometimes, we're gonna thirst. I am a controversial person. Neutrality is actually siding with the oppressor. But what the hell are we doing if we can't make a statement that literally just acknowledges the worth of people's lives? We need more bias in football. This is Real Francamente, the podcast. Hopefully some of this piques your interest and you'll stick along with us for the ride.
Hey, make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to follow Franca on Twitter and Instagram at Real Francamente for the latest news. And lastly, please visit realfrancamente.com for bonus content, including articles, photos, and for more information about the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast of and for the people, the greatest football podcast on earth, Real Francamente. My name is Franca. I'm your host, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Are you ready to bias your football content? Let's go. Hello again. We're still here with our tiny mic. Welcome to part 2 of this recap bonus episode situation we've got going on. It's been so great to do this, to reminisce, to see how far we've come. I'm so grateful. I'm thankful to all of you. I love so much that I get to do this, unapologetically, that I get to, to bring y'all this knowledge. I said this for the first half, but I'm gonna reiterate now again for the second half that it's been amazing to do the recon work, right? The research behind this, to get all of the clips and everything like that, to see how far we've really come and how much of my philosophies of life as Franca, right, really were introduced and solidified on this podcast, which is a football podcast, right? That's why I always say, even if you don't love football, like, you're going to get something out of this podcast. And there's so much amazing content in this first year of episodes, which was so successful. We were so consistent. We're so grateful for all of the support. We love you so much. Again, I'm wearing this is just the second part of the recap episode, but just, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing, because I realized when I was looking at all the kits, right, and we're doing some kit content too, that there's so many kits I haven't worn, including a classic Argentina kit. So I'm wearing this awesome one that I found at my parents' house. It's really, really old, not from Maradona's time playing, but it is a Maradona kit. Like, it's like the number 10 has Maradona. I think it's from the 90s. It's in pristine condition. I love it so much. Go check out YouTube if you're not, or check out my socials or whatever for the selfies. So I started. We're ending up the year with Argentina, and it's been so amazing to reminisce, to recap, to rewatch. We did a live about this. We did a live, kind of like year in review live. That was so fun. Go back and watch that if you haven't. It's on my Instagram feed. We have a tiny mic for this episode, which I'm so obsessed with. It's so cute. So go check that out on YouTube too if you haven't. So today we have the second half of the year, episodes 13 through 24, clips that I've chosen that I think, again, are representative of the diversity of topics we cover on this podcast. Football is just the excuse, right? Football is just the excuse. So again, thank you so much for your support. I love y'all so much. And without further ado, here is the second half of the year in review. about Messi. Let's talk about Messi. Let's talk about Miami. Let's talk about delusional United Stations. Let's talk about delusional United Stations. Let's talk about delusional United States. We'll save Messi for a little bit later. What the hell is going on at U.S. soccer? What the hell is going on at U.S. What the jokes write themselves at this point. It's not even fun to make fun of the U.S. anymore at this point. They're the laughingstock of the world. How are you going to rehire after all of that bullshit everyone was put through? How are you going to rehire this man? How are you going to rehire this man? How are we supposed to take you seriously as a football association? As a football federation? Like what, like on what point, like the jokes write themselves. You know, people are so delusional. This is actually related to the Messi thing because people are so delusionally talking about how, you know, Messi coming to MLS. And I talked about this on Sports as a Weapon a lot more. So listen to that episode too. But, you know, Messi coming to the US, it's going to do great things for soccer. And then the US goes and does that. Like, you are the laughing stock of the world. Also, let's look at the delusion that some of these U.S. soccer fans had, that they were like, they thought they were going to get these big names that were all up for grabs or whatever. Like, bitch, no one wants to come here. There was actually, I don't know if it was an article or a long form tweet that mentioned that, like, you know, people were saying like, oh, so-and-so, like Ancelotti, like different people being like linked to the U.S. They didn't even take a call from the U.S. Federation because your federation ain't shit. Your team ain't shit. Nobody wants to be complicit in this imperialist bullshit, and nobody wants to deal with the corruption that is CONCACAF. All right. So I just love, because I always know I'm right. I know I'm always right. Like, I don't need confirmation of that. But when it does come, and when that validation does come, you betcha I'm going to rub it in your face, especially if it has to do with imperialism, especially if it has to do with U.S., you know, like centrism and capitalism and all that bullshit. Like, you betcha. Like, I told you, we told you this team ain't shit. This country as a footballing nation ain't shit. It ain't never going to be shit. And it's just so delicious when stuff like that happens, because it just puts the delusional, you know, fascists in their place. And it's beautiful. Like, what did you why did you go through that whole circus of pretending to like take this seriously? Also, like, the whole thing was bullshit. There was no correct side. There was no side to be on. There was no one to root for, because it was all like, it was literally a petty argument between rich parents from North Jersey. By the way, this is one of the things I'm not proud of, but it's so accurate to the way white people, especially, but in these football spaces, act. And you know what? Let's talk about the connection with the number one issue of why the U.S. as a nation, but also in terms of their leagues, okay, is never going to amount to anything in terms of football. And I've said this before. Rich people are not good at sports. Rich people are not good at sports. They've never had a need for anything. They've never felt hunger. I mean that metaphorically, also literally, but they've never felt hunger. They've never felt drive to need to do anything to escape a situation, like whether it's living on the streets or whether it's whatever other, you know, things folks have to deal with who are poor. Rich people are not good at sports because they've never had to sweat, metaphorically. They've never not known where their next meal is going to come from. The best players in the world of any sport, but definitely football, which is like the democratizing sport in terms of essence, right? Came from nothing. That's not a coincidence. What happens in the US? We've got this bullshit pay to play. The US, the most capitalist fucking imperialist nation in the world. okay, is so capitalist that every little thing needs to be exploited for money. So you've got this pay to play system that starts when kids are really, really little. Who can afford to play on the teams, the traveling teams, like all of these teams that will get you to a level that you'll get noticed to even get on some of these youth academies, to even get on some of these, that will get you on the path to national team playing. Rich people. And rich people are not good at sports. So then you've got people like your little captain, NRA Mar, who everyone loves and is so overrated. Not only is he a racist, NRA member, like card carrying, imperialist, all of that stuff, fascist, but he's just not that good. He's just not that good. Like the overrating of that man is abysmal, right? That's your captain. That's your leader. That's your guy that you put your whole, all your eggs in his basket. Of course you're going to fucking fail. Now you're going to embarrass yourself and be the laughingstock in 2026 when the World Cup is hosted here, a joint World Cup, because everyone keeps forgetting that part. And you're going to embarrass yourself at home. And I can't wait for it because you did this. This is your own doing, US Soccer, by putting on this whole circus, okay? All of this, and the point of this is that it's all connected to the fundamental issue of why this whole shit blew up, which was should have been nothing, this fight between the Reinas and Berhalter and who knew whom, and this and the kids and whatever. It's the exact toxicity of suburbia, white suburbia soccer moms in the United States. And that's who you're putting all your eggs in their basket. That's who you're counting on to take you far in the World Cup. You're delusional. You're delulu. It's delulu o'clock. Okay. There is no better word to describe fucking US soccer stands and their little delusions, right? As this new word that TikTok taught me, which I'm obsessed with, which is delulu. All right. No more delulu fascists. That's the name of the episode. The name of the episode is Delulu. Okay. No more. Get over yourself. How much more are you gonna fall flat on your face and embarrass yourselves and continue to keep up this rhetoric? At this point, I don't even feel right roasting you. And my bread and butter, okay, my raison d'être, okay, my reason for existing, okay, is roasting US soccer and US soccer fans. And I don't even feel comfortable doing it because it's embarrassing, because at this point, it's why kick a horse when it's down? Is that a saying? I don't even know, right? Why would I keep going? You're doing it to yourselves. The jokes write themselves. It's embarrassing. Stop it. Stop it. Become humble. Do some self-reflection, okay? Reflect on why you're so delulu that you cannot have an inch of self-criticism. Because then what happens is when that shit happens, then all the fanboys come oh, we trust in this and he's really good and whatever. We have to stop this. We need a dose of reality for United Station Delulu soccer fans. And nothing makes me happier, though. Nothing makes me happier than seeing US soccer fail. Let's talk about styling kits too, right? Because here's the thing. Fashion is something that is typically associated with femininity, right? And the feminine. And as such, we have a very misogynist way of looking at and talking about fashion, and specifically talking about women in sports fashion. Okay. So when you go to a game, so women and non-men, we can't win. We can't win, right? If we do the tomboy thing, right, where we're just plain Jane, wear a kit and whatever, and call it a day and get to the stadium, then it's this, and you're not feminine enough, and you get tested for your knowledge and criticized for this, criticized for that. If you express yourself, and if you identify as, you know, as femme, and you express yourself and you style your kit, like I would go to this one is also in here, I think, maybe not. Yeah, a picture of my Red Bulls home 2010 kit, Henri, and I always pair it with red lipstick. And sometimes I like do my hair in braids, or like I'll do like different things. Like you style the kit, right? Like if this is a passion of yours, a part of the fun is styling it in different ways, wearing it with different things, and different accessories. So then if you do that, then it's like, oh, then you're to this and to that, and like, why are you? That's not stadium wear and whatever. And it's like, how can we win? This is why actually doing something like Kit Girl Summer, aside from being cutesy, fun, and like you get to post a lot of selfies, is empowering. And it's like taking back that narrative. Like, no, I don't give a fuck if you men, cisgendered, straight men, right, think you own the sports world and you can like make these rules. Fuck off. Because I can probably school you on many, many things related to football and probably many other sports too. But secondly, even if I couldn't, who gives a fuck? Why are we trying to gatekeep who can be a fan and who can't? And especially based on misogyny or racism or any of the other injustices or homophobia, right? And so my red lipstick kits I wear with the Red Bulls. Also the Barcelona home kit, especially 16-17, is a good one for red lipstick because it's got like sometimes they go more on the like pomegranate color side, the Blaugrana, the original Barcelona kit, but sometimes they go real red, and that's where you can really get away with a red lip. And so styling it's like a statement, right? You show up unapologetically girly. And if that's not my brand, right, for Real Francamente and also for Sol y Luna Consulting, like that's it's in your face girly because it also has substance, and your brain explodes as a misogynist when those two things coexist. And that's my favorite thing, is to make bigots' brains explode, right? When things that seemingly can't go together do. So I just love it. I love that Kit Girl Summer was such a thing. Here's a great point. I'm about to make a great point here, right? Players, football players, like sportscasters, people in the space, people in the field, you know, they love to strike fear into folks and being like, oh, don't be too political. Don't be too controversial. Make sure you toe that line. You know where I'm going with this, right? This shit proves that is bullshit. It is not about not being political. It is not about not taking sides or not wanting to offend. Okay, because here's the prime example of a time you could have just shut the fuck up. You wanted to not be controversial. Don't defend a fucking rapist. All right. And yet here you are. So this is definitive proof when people say don't be controversial, don't, you know, be whatever, don't voice your opinion. It's not about being political. It's not about voicing your opinion. It's about the fucking message. It's okay to defend fascism. It's okay to defend a rapist, but let you be on the side that is against rape, that is against racism. Now you're too controversial. Now you're too radical. Now you're too this. Now you're too that. You're all fucking hypocrites, okay? You're all fucking hypocrites. Every single last name on that list and every single last person that came out in defense of this fucking latest rapist, who's not, by the way, the only one that's even now still being defended, okay? We have one on my team. There's one at Arsenal. Like it is just incomprehensible that this continues to happen, that we continue to let teams and people and players get away with it and turn the other way and pretend it's not happening and be in denial because it's our team. Fuck no. Okay. This has got to stop. And this is going to lead right into the Women's World Cup discussion, because what there is too is a lot of virtue signaling around this and very little action. And for me, that's so hypocritical. And like, sometimes it's debilitating. Sometimes it's like, it's so bad that it's hard to even comment, right? This is a few days removed now from when this came out. When this first came out that he was found not guilty and all that stuff, and it was like a shit show on Twitter, I didn't really participate that much, because honestly, sometimes I just don't have the emotional bandwidth or capacity to get into shit, right? But like the shit I saw from people who were complicit in misogynist slander campaigns, from people who are complicit in defending harassers and, you know, and people like that in real life, like I just had to sit back, had to take a little break, right? I had to take a little break from commenting, because it's just not, it doesn't compute. It doesn't compute. My biggest thing is authenticity and transparency. And I can't stand hypocrisy. It's like, like when it's like cynical, you know, like just like blatant, obvious shit. So I don't know, man. Shit sucks. We've got rapists, you know, going free. We've got rapists being welcomed back to teams. Cancel culture is not real unless, you know, in certain cases where the canceled are marginalized and too radical, then that's a whole other discussion. And that has to do a lot more with other stuff rather than what, you know, they're actually being canceled for. But that's a whole other discussion. But cancel culture is not real. These people are still making money. These people are still being defended. These people will still have whatever the fuck they want in life and access to everything. And that is systemic misogyny in a nutshell. Big news in South American ball. I mean, this is one of the best things, in my opinion, to happen in a very long time, in the most exciting signings, especially for my two identities. And that is, drum roll, what are we talking about? We're talking about Cavani to Boca Juniors. The way that I twerked on a wall when I found out that was happening. I'm just kidding. Or am I? No. It's like, I can't imagine a more joyful intersection of things I love than Cavani and Boca Juniors. Okay. Like that isn't like what, like what a fit, like for seeing Cavani in the Boca kit, like just, the marketing, like the announcement around it, everything was so good, like well done and just like so classy. They started, you know, Boca started by, you know, just posting a picture of like a suitcase and a mate and like the little Uruguay flag. And it was like, and like, you know, there are obviously rumors. Like I am of the belief that I don't believe a rumor. Even if Fabricio Romano says it, like, I don't believe a rumor until I see, I've said this before in public, until I see the person in a kit warming up, okay, with their team. I don't believe it until there's an announcement from the official team account. And the announcement includes the person in a kit, because so much stuff I've been, you know, there's things have fallen through, this, that, the other thing. So I'm like, it's a no from me. But when Boca started, so there were rumors. And so when Boca started, but I didn't, you know, there's always, I was like, oh, no, this is too good to be true. So Boca posted that thing. I was like, it could be anyone really. Uruguayans and Argentinians play, you know, Uruguayans play in Argentina all the time, vice versa. Like could have been anyone. And then they did a couple other teasers, and then like the announcement graphics, I don't know, whoever is the community manager, it's called globally, but it's like the person that runs social media, that does whatever, you know, plus the designer, whoever, everyone involved in the marketing team for Boca Juniors around this announcement deserves a massive raise. It was all so well done. All of the videos, like once we actually saw him in the kit, there was one of the announcements was a mate with like the, you know, like the engraved, you know, like little Boca Juniors thing. Like, I mean, it, and his name, it was just so good. Every single thing made me happier than the last when he finally came out of the tunnel. I mean, and like they had, you know, the official announcement. It was just so good. It was just so good. I'm like, I can't. It makes me so happy to see him in those colors. It makes me excited again. Not that I ever wasn't excited about Boca, but like How amazing. How amazing to have that to look forward to. Everything's let's remember, everything's in shambles. Everything's in shambles, okay? Like capitalism sucks, like everything's expensive, we can't pay our rent, no one, like everything sucks. Everything sucks. And so let me disassociate, okay? A little bit with enjoying this signing that is historic, right? Of Cavani going up. Like Cavani has always played. Cavani, like let's talk about it. Cavani has played for Napoli. Maradona, Napoli is like, if I, like again, like the Serie A is not my league, but obviously like always have been a Napoli fan, within those confines because of Maradona. Like there's no question about it. Also like the fact that Napoli is a region within Italy that faces racism, right? Like even though they're Italian, there's this whole thing. So like obviously, right? So like he's played for Napoli. He's played for Manchester United, my team, regardless of what I'm currently wearing. Okay. And like now he's playing for, I mean, like obviously like he's played for teams, but I'm just like talking about the ones that mean so much to me. Right. And like he's an incredibly strong, like serious, humble, he embodies that je ne sais quoi that is the Uruguayan garra charrua, like, and humbleness. So a lot of what we talk about when we talk about Uruguayan football is the humility, despite being the first team to ever win the World Cup, the first team to host the World Cup, which obviously that history weighs heavy, right? Like obviously that's why we've got some of the best players in the world consistently, despite being a tiny country of 3 million, right? I don't think another player encompasses that spirit of humility while at the same time being off the charts good, as Cavani does. He's like a serious guy. He doesn't do mess. He doesn't do drama. He's committed to his teams. Like whoever he has running his social media and designs and everything, like when he was at United, he would post a graphic, him like his own brand or whatever you want to call it, like a graphic per game. Every single game he would post something for, like just on his own, regardless of whatever the team posted. Like I think that's like the commitment, to like the like the commitment to your job, like the loyalty, right? The loyalty to have that discipline to say like my job is to also post and promote, even though these are some of the Manchester United is one of the biggest brands in the world, right? In terms of marketing, and it's become, it's a corporation at this point. But he would do that. And so like, it's just incredible to see, like, it's been rare recently. Well, I mean, the biggest joy of all I had recently in December, right? Of Argentina winning the World Cup. But it's been rare recently to be this excited or have this exciting of a move, right? I think Bielsa to Uruguay was my last biggest excitement that I also didn't believe was happening. I didn't believe it was happening until it was super official because I didn't want to get my hopes up and all that stuff. And it's just, it's nice to be able to have those moments of joy, those brief moments of joy. Like few things these days bring us all joy, and Cavani to Boca Juniors, it's wholesome, it's sweet, it's amazing. It's the juxtaposition of two beautiful things coming together. The spirit of Boca, the team of the people. Boca Juniors is literally the team of the people in Argentina and in Latin America. Like it's, there's all sorts of things in terms of the history of it. They've also been targets of all sorts of like racism and classism because it's a poor neighborhood, especially, and this is all jokes aside about how River is unrateable, right, in terms of the rivalry, but also like all jokes aside, that River calls themselves Los Millonarios, They revel in that identity of being from the rich part of town, right? Versus Boca, like the team of the people, they're, you know, darker complected people who live there and things like that. And so there's all sorts of racism that's always hurled against Boca Juniors. And so, like, in terms of that, right, it's special. And we get these little pockets of, again, like, to go back to the pockets of joy thing, I don't know that I would call this a pocket of joy because it's interesting, right? And there's nuance. So Pep Guardiola, to me, you know, a god. Like, first of all, he's so sexy, right? He's so sexy. I love him so much. Like, when he like just gets angry, I'm just like, oh my god, Pep, like, come on. Daddy Pep, call me. But no, we're not. We haven't done a thirst segment in a while either. I love me some Pep. Love me some Pep. Okay. So anyway, Pep, a complex figure. One of the greatest managers to ever do it, hands down, definitely in our generation, but ever. And he, while he's complicit, obviously, so I don't want, you know, people are going to come for me and like be like, oh, man, whatever. Like, yes, I will preface this by saying he's complicit in the corruption as the coach of the biggest case of sports washing probably there's ever been, right? Manchester City. But as a Catalonian, right, as a Catalan, he's had his moments of really cool analysis and critique of things like FIFA, of things like the status quo. Like, if I didn't know better, and I do, but if I didn't know better, I would almost say he's subversive. And he's had subversive moments of like talking to the press, of like bringing things to light that are real issues, while obviously avoiding the elephant in the room, which is corrupt, dirty oil money from, you know, from these countries. He has his moment, and I think he very much has like an internal dilemma. He's very aware that he's complicit, and at the same time, he has so much to say, and like obviously so much he doesn't say because he can't, because he'd be fined or like whatever. You know, they're always being censored. But there's a really cool account. They're on Instagram and Twitter. It's called Fútbol y Política. It's in Spanish. They're all like Spanish run, but like a lot of it is, you know, posted in both languages. And they posted an interview, and I'm not sure how recent the interview is because he has said stuff like this before. Pep has, but it's definitely worth mentioning that he went off on a rant about modern football, and look for this interview, and the way that that we have unrealistic expectations of these players, which are just human. Now, again, I will preface this for people like my dad, who doesn't listen to my podcast, I don't think, but I'm always referencing him, right? So like he's always talking about like modern football being ruined by money, which is true. There was a really cool graphic that was posted when Manchester City played. Who did Manchester City play, y'all? It wasn't Brentford. Maybe it was Burnley, or maybe it was Burnley. Whoever Manchester City played, they put up a graphic, and my dad has always said he wishes they did this for every single game. That there was in addition to the scoreboard, he wishes there was a board that said how much each team has spent on their players. And I think that's brilliant. It's true, because modern football is being ruined by money. So, but where my dad and I disagree is where he goes like, oh, of course, like logic says the team that spends the most money should win. While yeah, that money always does win. There's also an element to that where like football is not logic, right? Okay. All of that aside, Pep had this brilliant interview where he pointed out how the expectations of these modern players who are just human, at the end of the day, they're human, right? And we expect them to go here, go there, play here, play a derby here, play a derby next week, and play a game on Sunday and on Wednesday and on Friday. And like, it's more and more and more expectations, right? Like how much more, like the pressure that we put on these players, on these coaches, especially when they play for these big teams. And he was calling it out. And I think that's brilliant. And I think it's so true, the way that we treat these people like machines. And I get it. We pay them a lot of money. But the problem with that discourse is focusing on the money, like that capitalist, like, you know, like urge to consider people machines, to consider people like that we own them. We like, you make that much money, so you have to perform for me. And it's like there's such a problematic kind of, you know, underlying thing there. But like that's the reality. Like they're under so much pressure. And what Pep said was like, and of course, and so they asked him, they were like, do you think, are you saying this because you hope it changes, or do you think that it's never going to change and it's going to get worse? He said it's going to get worse. It's not going to change, because what happens if a player falls, they're replaced by the next one. It's like robots, right? Like, oh, you can't play this guy because he's injured. Bring on the next one. Bring on the next one, and deliver. Like he's under a lot of pressure. Before that, he was at Barcelona. I mean, he's one of the greatest managers of all time. He's only played, I mean, like he's only coached, you know, famously massive teams. Like I can't imagine that pressure. Ultimately, they're still human. And let's remember that while, yes, we need to call out capitalism, yes, we need to call out imperialism, we need to call out corruption, at the end of the day, they're people. The people that are getting paid. We should get more mad at the system and at FIFA and at the organization that allows that kind of money to get exchanged for human beings. That's fucked up, right? We have to call that out. And yeah, we can, you know, criticize players and coaches and everything like that, but like ultimately they're getting paid that much because some entity said that that's what they get. It's not that they're blameless and we're like, oh my God, poor little, like, you know, person making billions of dollars. No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like, let's have that nuanced discussion, because a lot of people are brushing off Pep by saying like, oh, but he takes the money. Yeah, he takes the money. Like the man is good. He's the best, you know, he's one of the best to ever do it. The system is set up so that like he makes a lot of money. Yes, it fucking sucks. And we need to overhaul the whole shit. Right. But that doesn't mean that what he's saying isn't valid. We've gone off the deep end, right? And of course there's a lot of hypocrisy. This reminds me of another type of hypocrisy related to you know, people who will play the card, you know, when they're to, like when Nacional lost to Boca Juniors, there was a whole discourse about how like, oh, like Nacional is the poor man's team and like Boca Juniors has so much money. Like, bitch, compare. This was again Enrique, my dad. Okay, my dad's point, like 100%. Like he said this, and like everyone, we all went like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Yeah, okay, you can compare Nacional, what they get versus Boca Juniors, but like don't look like Nacional is some little small town, like little fucking underdog. Like they're not, because in the Uruguayan league, would compare Nacional to Liverpool. Like there's a Liverpool in Uruguay, but it's a small team. That's not a fair, you know, like you can't claim that sometimes, but then still be like, oh yeah, like we're this like massive team. It's like we have to always be putting these things in perspective, right? Like what can we have the nuance to understand what Pep is saying, call it out, and still call out the fact that Manchester City has too much money, that Pep has too much money, that these players have too much money, but ultimately that's the fault of whomst? Whomst's fault is it that all this money is being exchanged, right? It's systemic. It's the same thing that you see in society when people blame human beings for being poor and not the system and not capitalism, right? Like this is the exact, like FIFA is the most corrupt organization on the planet, okay? And we're letting them get away with murder while we blame Pep for making money. Of course we should abolish billionaires, and that includes coaches and players of sports, right? And millionaires. But let's have the same energy for the organization that allows this. Because that's where I get into the dilemma where it's like we're all a bunch of hypocrites. Like if we really had this smoke, we would all just stop watching, but we don't do that. Right. And we don't even call out FIFA as much as we should, or the system as much as we should. As with everything else. So, okay. All right. So we're talking rape culture because why? Because we could not, as women, as non-men, we cannot have nice things. We can't have nice things. We could not have enjoyed a World Cup final without some fucking bullshit from misogynist, bigoted men. Truly, like the the World Cup final was tainted by this nonsense, okay? Sexual assault that we all saw on behalf of Luis Rubiales. Now, I already have seen, luckily not in my circles, but you see like the trolls come out and say all the let's do a mini recap for anyone who's been living under a rock, okay? And remind ourselves that what happened was Luis Rubiales, with his disgusting smug face, okay, and he's the president of the Soccer Federation in Spain, and he's so disgusting. Like, looking at his picture, like, literally makes me want to throw up, like his smug little face. Now, let's start out by saying that this incident, and if you're listening, I assume you know what we're referring to. This incident happening like in front of all these cameras and him thinking nothing of it is so telling of what is actually going on behind closed doors in that federation. Okay. Let's remember that they've already been in trouble. We've already had Spain team members threaten to quit over corruption and unfair, treatment. And we can now assume that some of it had to do with sexual assault, right? So this fucking asshole, smug ass bitch, decided to kiss on the lips one of the players, right? Jenny Hermoso. And then when stuff like this happens, I don't even know, I don't even know where to start to unpack it, because like, how are you gonna do that? Okay. And in that moment, obviously, like, anyone who's been in an uncomfortable situation like that knows that the fact that she didn't like visibly recoil, or you see like all the victim blaming happening, and and everyone's like, oh my god, she looked like she consented, she was smiling, she was happy. Like, dude, first of all, she just won the World Cup. I guarantee you, every person who is not a man in your life has been in a situation that they've had to brush off or laugh off. I can't take myself seriously with this hat, like, talk about a serious topic. I look ridiculous. Okay. We've all had, I have ADHD. We've all had that moment where we have had to, either because of racism, because of sexism, homophobia, misogyny, whatever, bigotry, okay, we've had to brush off, laugh off, pretend it didn't happen, okay, an uncomfortable moment like that. And that doesn't mean that it wasn't harassment, okay, or that it was okay or anything like that. So it happens, we all see it, it's cringe as hell immediately to anyone, right, watching. It's so cringe. And then on top of that, then we have to deal with all of the victim blaming of people, being like, well, she looked like she enjoyed it, whatever, which brings up so much stuff for so many of us that have been in those situations. And then it got worse from there. Okay. It got worse from there. There was obviously immediate backlash. Okay. People, immediately called for him to be fired, basically. It didn't happen. And not only that, but he doubled down. Okay. The federation was like, we're not firing him. Then people were calling for his resignation. He was like, I'm not resigning. But not only did he not resign quietly, okay, he went full on double down tyrant, Francisco Franco emulating, like, big self-victimizing, narcissistic, like, oh my god, poor me, this is being blown out of proportion by these feminists, and I didn't do anything wrong, and I will not step down, I will not. He looked like a fucking, like, tyrant, literally, like, just unhinged, defending his actions. And I think what was the worst part of that tantrum is the way that many prominent members of that federation or / like former players or, people who were in the crowd applauding him, right? I think that's, for me, that's always the worst part, because like obviously the assault is bad, the harassment is bad, right? And the bigotry is bad. And that's that's like the lowest, that's like the bare minimum is calling out how bad that action is, like, and we all should do it, and we immediately should, like, that's a black or white thing, like it's wrong, it's blatantly wrong, right? For me, it's always like in past cases of like rapists getting, found not guilty and all that stuff. And like, I always say this, like the worst part is the people that continue to openly support it, right? And to openly be like, yeah, you're right, you're just a victim of these feminists and like whatever bullshit they were saying. It doesn't sit right with me how many prominent figures supported him not being fired or any sort of consequences. Then we started to see the way that people like Hector Bellerin, who I think was the first, he might have not been the first, there were a few that started to come out to be like, okay, like this is, Hector Bellerin, not to give any man any credit at all, right? Because like, really, we're not doing that on this podcast, but for standing up for basic human rights. But Hector Bellerin has always been on the right side of history on that front, so we can recognize that in a world where people are openly supporting rapists, right? Like we'll recall that famous episode title, "You could have just shut the fuck up." Could have just shut the fuck up, right? In a world where you could have just shut the fuck up, now going in the other direction, right? Hector Bellerin never does keep his mouth quiet, keep his mouth shut on just basic. It's obvious. It's obvious to me. It just feels so insane that we have to sit here and act like it's so radical, and we have to give Hector Bellerin props for standing up for what's like so blatantly right. But that is the world we live in, right? That's the world we live in. So anyway, so we've got all these supporters and like all of this, like, what's going to happen? Will they, won't they? It was so bad. Okay. Imagine this. Okay. It was so bad that FIFA, the most corrupt organization on the planet, okay, had to step in. Imagine doing something so horrendous that Mr. What did he say? He was like, I feel African on the inside. Remember that whole debacle? The president of FIFA, he was like, I feel African and I feel gay, and like he was like trying to be inclusive, but it was like a whole disaster. That man, okay, had to come and be the morality police. That's how bad this was. That's who you're getting to be the morality police in this case. You done fucked up, right? This was out in the open. So what drama is going on over at the Uruguay national team camp? Do y'all know? Bielsa unapologetically himself, as the person trusted with the national team, he takes that job very seriously, and he doesn't give into pressure. He does what he does, and he's like, if you're going to trust me fully, right? And in his capacity as the expert, he did not call up Cavani nor Suarez, and he had his reasons, and none of it is personal. And he didn't say, and we need to be very, because a lot of people start to then like hypothesize and say like this and whatever, like, oh, he's done, he whatever. But the number one thing is that Bielsa, with not calling them up for the first two matches, he didn't say he's never going to call them up again. One of the things he said in response to all this, because everyone, like, it started like a chaos dumpster fire of nonsense. This is why when he did his presser, all of the questions were about this. And he was like, can we talk about football at all? Or like, do y'all care? Or like, you just care about this drama, right? He didn't call up Suarez or Cavani. He had his reasons. You know, he didn't feel they were ready. Both of them kind of, you know, Cavani just you know, started at Boca. And he just felt like the squad that he had picked was strong. We have to respect that. We give someone a job. It's like managers can do no right, and sometimes managers truly can do no right. But we give someone this job. It's a high profile person. It's arguably the best manager in the history of the sport. How are you gonna pull this shit? Because then it also becomes about like the rivalry in Uruguay, like the Pinero Nacional thing, and it's like, oh, because he hates him because he's Nacional. Like people are just so like, that's like so pedantic, you know? So he didn't call up Suarez or Cavani. Cavani handled it like a true classy gentleman that he is, and said barely anything at all. If, you know, he was like, if he doesn't feel I'm ready, that's his decision. That was like his response, right? If he was upset, he didn't show it. If he was upset, he didn't show it. Suarez, on the other hand, did not handle it with class. And Suarez has been a controversial figure forever. And some things are defensible, some things are not. We can't deny his influence. We can't deny his talent, right? But he's a hothead, to say the least, right? I think he's a good person fundamentally. And, you know, and there's stuff and there's nuance that we can discuss. But all of that aside, because we won't be discussing that today, he threw a little tantrum. He threw a little tantrum when he played the night that it was official, that he wasn't getting called. He scored a goal, and he scored in Brazil, and he like pointed to his jersey number 9. Oh, because before this, the other thing is that Darwin called up Suarez personally and asked him if he could wear the number 9, because Darwin knew he was getting called up, and I guess there was like, it was known that Suarez wasn't going to get called up. So out of respect, because Darwin didn't have to do that, because that's also not his, it's not also Luis Suarez's decision, right? Who wears the number 9 if you're not called up. But out of respect, Darwin called Suarez and asked him to wear the number 9 kit. And supposedly, like, Suarez said yes. And that was that, okay? However, then when he scored that goal that night, when it was official he wasn't going to get called up, he like held up like his jersey like this, like his celebration was like pointing to the number 9 and to Suarez, right? As like a very clear like slap in the face to Bielsa and even to Darwin, I think, because I think that that's going to like Darwin also grew up watching and idolizing Suarez, and like seeing him do that, like, oh, like I'm the true number 9, right? While his intention was probably just to like, you know, slap Bielsa in the face, like it had to be hurtful to Darwin too, you know? So then not only did he do that, and so then that started to like go viral, the pictures of it and everything, but then after the game, he posted himself on his Instagram stories, like more fodder. He was like, oh, I'm the true number 9 and whatever, like Uruguay true number 9 or some shit like that. And it was just so unnecessary. It's like unnecessary drama for no reason. Just like totally like, why? Like, why? What? Like, I get being upset, but like, how self-centered are you that you assume you're entitled to a position? And then to be like, okay, like maybe I'm not called up this time. It doesn't mean that he's not going to get called up for other qualifying matches. And like, truly, like, let the young kids have their time. Uruguay has been an old, slow, defensive squad for like generations. Like, let us see what Bielsa can do. If we're going to trust him, I think we have to trust him fully. And like, for me, like, that's that. Like, that's that. I'm on the Bielsa side of things forever, always and forever on the Bielsa side of things. And so I trust him. I trust his decision. And I think that Suarez throwing a tantrum, first of all, it's a bad look for him. It's a bad look. It's a bad, you know, for everyone that looks up to him, like for people like Darwin. I just think it's not healthy. It's just not healthy. And maybe there's a reason why you weren't called up, Suarez, that has to do with your personality and your, and the way that you reacted. Like if you thought that was going to be the way to get Bielsa to take you back, because Bielsa hates that shit. Bielsa's a no nonsense, like no drama kind of person. So that wasn't the way. So I don't know what's going to happen going forward. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on like Suarez and Bielsa beef watch, and see where that all goes. And my whole thing has always been true anti-fascism, true anti-racism, true anti-misogyny, true anti-homophobia. And I say true because a lot of these football spaces are permeated with the typical liberal, which, by the way, when I criticize liberals, please don't get it twisted. I don't do it from the conservative side, which like is the bottom, like it's like the lowest bar. We should all be criticizing conservatives. Okay. Like this isn't from that side. I criticize liberals because they are basically conservatives. Like they are just conservatives with lipstick on, like meaning like referring to that saying that's like putting lipstick on a pig or whatever. Like they're no different. They're still imperialists. They're still, they still support war criminals. Like the football space is inundated with this type of person who will pretend to be about it, will pretend, for clout to say like, oh, support women's sports, support this, and like Black Lives Matter. But like in reality, like they actually are imperialists who support the war machine, who support the US men's national team, who support MLS. Like you can't, like those things are not compatible, right? Like in terms of your critique. Now, I'm not saying like, okay, you support what you support, but like, don't do that without a single thought in your brain. Like, there's a TikTok edit of the song by She Who Shall Not Be Named that's like, I've got nothing in my brain. And then it just, instead of like going on, it goes, nothing in my brain. Ooh, ooh, right? Like it just keeps going, I've got nothing in my brain. Like that's literally, like you can't exist at like with like devoid of any critique, right? Like it is incompatible to support the war machine and imperialism and capitalism. And oh my gosh, look at Luna. She looks so cute. She's a little beagle back there. She just can't be away from me. I have ADHD. I don't know if y'all knew this. But yeah, so it's incompatible. And so like I can't stand the hypocrisy, because then the people that are actually like calling that shit out are the ones that get like, like, oh, they're this and they're that. And it's like, you're not doing any anti-racist work. You're not doing any anti-misogyny work because you're incapable of having like a dialectical thought, right? Like you're incapable of having that analysis, because you've been so brainwashed by the capitalist machine. I'm not about that. I mean, you'll notice, I don't really interact with many football like accounts or anything like that, like especially in the US, based space, because they're just not like those people are not my people. Like, and they it's people who like take offense to certain comments and things about like just real life. And like my shit is said from a standpoint of like lived experience, of viewpoint for sure, but also like of this trajectory of academic study, which I think academia is bullshit, but I am a nerd and I have done a lot of research. So this isn't just pulled out of left field, right? Like there is a like something behind it that's a little, there's an intellectual content. And I'm always really hesitant to say that word because it gets people are like, oh, intellectual and this and like some like it's just ironic. It's ironic the way that the hypocrisy shows in these critiques, right? So anyway, all of that to say that my branding is unapologetic, okay? Yes, it's girly. Yes, it's glittery. And also it's fucking serious. And also it's educational. And you go learn, okay? The reason why I even started to think about doing content is because years ago at this point, and I've written about this from an academic standpoint, everything like that. Like, and I made a thread that became like the thread TM, right? Like trademark, like, that became like the silly way to refer to it. That got me a little bit of a following on Twitter on my personal account. That was about Barcelona and Real Madrid, right? Representing Real Madrid being fascist, Barcelona representing freedom traditionally, historically, obviously with the caveat that yes, now it's all gone to shit because modern football, because capitalism ruins everything. If there's one thing I am, it's consistent. And that's what people can't stand, right? Because people who are hypocrites and don't have any like idea about how to analyze and have these thoughts, these like this analysis will say like, oh, this is, you know, how is this like whatever, like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's consistency. If you look, when I'm analyzing Barcelona from a standpoint of freedom because of what it meant during the Spanish Civil War, where Spain had one of the most brutal dictators, because he didn't die. Okay, he was in there for decades. And so like Spain has a very complicated history with fascism, and that's just real. That's just like real history. So like when people can't back their shit up with facts, they get mad at me, and I'm like, well, you could just do the research, right? So anyway, my thing is consistency. If I'm calling something out, I will call myself a hypocrite that while I'm calling out capitalism and corruption, I'm still watching the sport and wearing kits. I've said this so many times. I'm such a hypocrite too. We all are. We either, if we're consistent and we're going to critique, we either have to shut the fuck up, or we have to you know, like quit watching. It's the only option. So, but at least having these discussions will open up that discourse to say, like, let's watch like intellectuals in a good way. Intellectualism is not a bad thing, right? Like intellectual, healthy discussion that's cerebral is not a bad thing. And so that's the spirit. And so because those things tend to not go hand in hand with pink, glittery crown, you know, imagery, I like to subvert those narratives. And I love pink and I love glitter, and I'm a serious fucking academic. What are you going to do about it? La importancia del hincha para el deporte, ¿no? Primero, la comparación de el deporte, de fútbol específicamente, con una religión, con el templo, con la misa, ¿ok? Con el carnaval, también es súper importante. Primeramente en Uruguay y Argentina especialmente, pero en muchos otros países también, pero es interesante porque Galeano es uruguayo y sabemos que está haciendo esta conexión a propósito. El fútbol y el carnaval son mitos nacionales, o sea, él dice, es la religión que no tiene ateos. Es la religión que no, la única religión que no tiene ateos, ¿no? No tiene ateos, porque todo el mundo es como parte de la tradición nacional, porque en los lugares donde las culturas indígenas fueron totalmente erradicadas o donde no quedó casi ninguna presencia de los mitos de la cultura, ¿no? Y de los ritos, esos lugares tuvieron que formar sus propios mitos nacionales, y por eso en lugares como en Uruguay y Argentina el fútbol no es solo fútbol, realmente es como una religión. Realmente es como ir a misa, ¿no? Entonces, y esto es algo que se estudia en los espacios de fenómenos de cultura popular. Entonces es bien interesante que el lector no entiende perfectamente, no tiene que hacer, imaginarse algo, ¿no? Quizás para alguien que fuera de esos países no entiende mucho lo de la religión, pero es totalmente así. Y también la importancia del hincha del partido. Yo escribí algo, y no me acuerdo dónde lo publiqué, cuando empezó la pandemia y estaban jugando todos sin público, y era como súper, como, daba hasta miedo, ¿no? Escuchar silencio en un partido, porque habla Galeano acá de la importancia de la hinchada. Otra vez el jugador número 12, la importancia de la hinchada y cómo puede hacer o romper, ¿no? Y también la manera en la que nosotros nos ponemos como parte de equipo. Decimos, soy de, ¿no? Soy de este equipo, nosotros ganamos, somos como parte de eso, que también se conecta con el ídolo, ¿no? Y la manera en la que nosotros nos vemos reflejados en ese ídolo. La verdad que es brillante. Esta es una de mis viñetas favoritas. Esta y la próxima son dos de mis viñetas favoritas de este libro, porque es tan real la manera en la que nosotros nos conectamos, nos convertimos para esas 2 horas. Los que somos racionales, eso se suspende. Lo tiramos por la ventana y somos capaces de decir cualquier cosa, ¿no? Que no diríamos racionalmente. Así que es súper, súper brillante. So it's 2023 and we are actively watching an actual genocide happen in Palestine, right? I mean, if there was ever a doubt, I've worn that Palestine kit, the Palestine support kit again. If there was ever a doubt that I was pro-Palestine, like, please, I'm not sure why that would be in terms of all of my philosophies on life, but like, let's be very clear. I realize I didn't say this like blatantly, but like obviously it's Palestine until they're free. What's going on is a literal genocide. It is an ethnic cleansing. What's going on is colonization. What's going on is, like, there's so many folks who pretend to be on the left and they talk about, indigeneity. They might have like a land acknowledgement in their stuff and they talk about like decolonization or whatever. Decolonization is not a fucking metaphor. All right. Decolonization is not a metaphor. What we're witnessing right now, if you claim to be about decolonization and pro-indigenous rights, guess what? Palestinians are indigenous to that land. And that's the reality of it. And what's going on is an ethnic cleansing and a genocide. And it is fathomable that so many people fall for Zionist propaganda. Now, let me get ahead of this too and say that Zionism is white supremacy and it's comparable to Nazism. Okay. That is Zionism. And folks will come and say, oh, well, Israel, blah, blah, whatever. Like, no, calling people anti-Semites. You know what is anti-Semitic is equating Israel with Jewish people, because there's so many Jewish people that are literally getting arrested, that are losing their jobs for speaking out in support of Palestine. Like, Judaism is not Zionism, and it is literally anti-Semitic to make that distinction. Okay. One of the best quotes of all time that I use in a lot of spaces is by Audre Lorde, one of my favorite thinkers. And this is paraphrased because I don't have this prepared and I didn't look it up. But I've used it recently in classes. Okay. Basically what she says is, and it's true, the US is on the wrong side of every single liberation struggle on earth. And if the US is on the side of Israel, you bet that is the genocidal side, because the US consistently since its inception has not only been on the side of terrorism, but been the terrorists. Okay. The CIA, like all the CIA backed dictatorships, like everything they've done. So it's consistent with imperialism for the US to be not only siding with Israel, but sending money. We are literally complicit in ethnic cleansing in Palestine. All of us are, because our tax dollars are going to it. Right. And on top of that, we claim, and bigots love to claim this, and hypocrites love to claim this, and liberals even love to claim this, like, it's a free country. It's a free country. Is it a free country? Because people are losing their jobs for simply having an opinion that is correct, by the way, on Palestine. People are losing their jobs. It's happening everywhere. I'm lucky enough to work somewhere now where they're like really, really open, and there's lots of discussions around this, and lots of pro-Palestine people, but excuse me, it is absolutely, it feels like gaslighting. If you've ever been gaslit by a man, it feels like gaslighting, but to like the nth degree. It feels like we're living in the Twilight Zone. Like, how can you look at those images and those videos of literal dead babies and feel nothing and side with the genocidal occupier settler that is Israel? I have privilege in many ways. I have white privilege. I have English speaking privilege. I have a lot of privileges, right, in society. And I will never shut my mouth when it comes to social justice. And I will always point out hypocrisy. And we're going to be consistent on this podcast. So if you thought that we were anti-imperialist, but would not side with the literal indigenous people in this conflict against the genocidal maniacs, I'm not sure where you were. I'm not sure where you've been. Okay. Palestine is the litmus test for leftists. People can call themselves leftists all day. Show me your support for Palestine. Otherwise, you ain't shit. Okay. I saw a great meme, a great quote tweet of a meme that I also used in class this week. And the meme said some bullshit like, oh, how can I care about, you know, what's going on in the Middle East when my rent is $3,000 and I need 6 jobs to live or something like that. And the quote tweet, when like that's a meme that's going around, like people who are idiots, right? And then the quote tweet was, let's not pretend these things aren't connected, something like that. It was like, if you actually took the time to realize that the reason our rent is so high and the reason we're so underpaid is because of what's going on, because of where the money is going that could be going to helping all of us, okay, on this land that is also stolen. But at least we might have healthcare or food or housing, okay, guaranteed. No, we have none of that. And instead of seeing that systemic connection to imperialism, people are out here acting like, oh, no, I can't worry about that because of this. And that's so selfish. And that's that toxic individualism that is bred by the unfettered capitalism that we are living with and under in this fucking hellhole of a country that we live in. So I think I'm tired. I think that is like really affecting me more so than I would like care to admit. And I've been just in awe of how many people who are acquaintances, because I don't really have that many friends. Friends, you know, the word friend is like really, really deep and important. And so I have a good number of really true, like good friends who see me, who value me, right? But I have a lot of acquaintances, and how many of my acquaintances, especially on Facebook, because Twitter's like my safe space. I love Twitter. Like Twitter's like I love Twitter. I'll die. Like I will go down with that ship. Like you will have to pry it from my cold dead hands. I understand, you know, all the bullshit that with X and everything, but like, it's one of those things. We're all complicit in bullshit anyway. Like that's let me be, you know, let me have my one thing. So on Twitter, it's like my safe space, but like Facebook and like even Instagram, I've had to unfollow and like unfriend so many people for their bullshit defend of this genocidal bullshit. I just can't do it. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired. And even if there weren't, it doesn't matter because it's my podcast and I can do whatever the fuck I want. But there is a connection to football in that, first of all, politics and football have always been related. Okay. This is not a new thing. And we have had obviously connections with Palestine in terms of kids and things like that. There's teams called Palestine, Palestina, you know, Latin America and all these places. But also ever since this started, we have seen support for one of the things that's keeping me going is seeing how many fan bases, and most recently today it was Celtic. And they had they filled their stadium with Palestine flags. Celtic has always been about it. This is the second time we're talking about them in recent episodes. Or is it Celtic? Oh my gosh, I don't know. And so like you have teams that are traditionally historically, you know, about it, but then even teams like Liverpool, which I get that Liverpool fans think that they've always been historically about it, but they're a mainstream big corporation team. Ultimately, hate to break it to y'all, it's true. But they had pro-Palestine manifestations at their last game. So it because worldwide, just like with everything else, in the US, we're the most fascist, right? Because worldwide, you know, people actually have more freedom of speech than in the US. Although that doesn't mean they're not censored there, but at least, you know, there's a little bit more like willingness of people to put themselves out there, I feel like, as a whole, than in the US. Like we see so much support for Palestine. MLS immediately put out a statement that was like, which backfired on them tremendously, which the statement said like, oh, no international flags to be brought in. Like no like country flags, I think it said. I don't remember if it said country or international. It's like someone tweeted it immediately like, so no Star Spangled Banner then, I assume, right? Like, because that means you can't have US flags either. You cannot have it both fucking ways. You can't have it both ways. I can't stand it. I can't stand the hypocrisy. I can't stand any of it. So we've seen manifestations in football. We've seen, you know, football players, like, you know, they have to like be careful, but, you know, and like just figures, Pep's daughter, Maria, like she's really, and this is why I have so much patience for Pep, because Pep sold out. 100% he sold out. But even under like the, you know, like the way that he has to work under this, you know, this corporation team, which is Manchester City, he still does push the envelope a little bit more than I think someone else would. But like you can tell he raised a good one in his daughter. And she was at a Palestine march and rally. And like that's awesome to see, like so much support worldwide that like it keeps us going. I think social media can be awful in many ways, but I think sometimes it can be really great. And it's times like these when we can see that we are not alone, right? Because it can feel really lonely to be on the right side of history. I know because this has been my entire life. And like, that's not a, like, it is what it is. It's actually really lonely. It's really lonely a lot of the times to stand by your values when it would be so much easier to just say, fuck it, right? I really wish I envy sometimes. I really envy sometimes people who are ignorant. I see ignorant people all the time and they're like so happy. And I'm like, I wish that was me. Like not a worry in the world, not a thought behind those eyes. There's that that TikTok sound that's like used a lot for dogs. That's like, your brain is really smooth. Not a single wrinkle, right? And you usually see like a goofy dog, like literally like me to humans. But like I also am a little bit envious that there's people that can just live their life as if nothing was fucking crumbling around us. And I feel like being so like, you know, empathetic, so like living my values, like caring about social justice, caring about other humans is actually detrimental to my mental health. I got some content and I haven't done anything with it. Now that I think about it, I'm like, let's unpack that. Let's unpack that. If Boca had won, so let's go back to literally today from recording time. Today has been 11 months to the day that Argentina won the World Cup. Literally, it's been 11 months. First of all, I can't believe time has flown that much. We're almost at a year. When Argentina won the World Cup, I watched it and then my whole family left the second it ended to Manhattan. Okay. So we drove to Manhattan where it was madness, literally like just like Times Square. It was madness full of Argentinians. I mean, it was crazy. I got so much content. One of my reels, which is it's pinned to my Instagram at Real Francamente, got like 6,000 likes or something like that. Like for me, that's the most engagement I've ever gotten. And it was just a reel of like walking up to the celebrations in Times Square, right? Which was awesome. I posted so much content from that experience. And then now I'm like, I took a bunch of videos and things from the Boca game and I had this lived experience that I loved so much. It was so good, but I haven't posted anything like concrete. I haven't made a reel because we didn't win. Boca didn't win. The game was, we'll talk about it. But if they had won, I would have posted. But does Boca losing take away from the beautiful experience that I had pre-game and during the game, right? So there's something to be unpacked here about like what makes our experiences worth posting. And there's something to be unpacked about like the gaze that we shoot content for. Like do we do content, do we document for posterity, for memories, for like, you know, preserving the experience, or do we do it thinking about the gaze of who's going to watch it and then we refrain from posting it if we lose? That's there's a lot to unpack here, because why did I not post? Even though they lost, it was an experience that was awesome. I mean, like the chance, it felt like you were literally at La Boca. I mean, it was, and people had mate. I mean, like people were drinking beers. You could like do whatever. It was like every man for himself. It was like a cool, like savage spot. It felt like South America, truly. Not only because we were surrounded by Argentinians and like Boca fans, but people from, I mean, there were other people, other Latinos too, that, or like even like United Stations that are just Boca fans. Like that's a crazy dynamic, right? Like that's a crazy phenomenon. And so I took a bunch of content, didn't post it. I'm going to think about this. I want Global South players to thrive always. And especially when it's on these teams that like historically have been kind of like about Global South players, about, and like these leagues that like Premier League. Let's recall, let's do a little recap of this. I've talked about it before, but not at length, right? So today's camera work is also interesting. We're all doing our best, okay? That is the theme today. Everyone's doing their best. We're having grace. Okay, let's recall. Let's recap, class, for those of you who have been listening since day one. I've definitely talked about this at some point, but not at length, right? The Premier League is the league is I always say I have a love-hate relationship with Premier League, with my team, right? And a lot of that has to do with imperialism. Surprise, surprise, right? Imperialism, obviously, England being the great colonizers in the world. Imperialism in England is so deeply ingrained. Although I will say there's nuance here, because interestingly, like the main colony that the Brits colonized, the US, actually out colonized the colonizers. So it's interesting because we've actually like surpassed them in terms of causing damage around the world in imperialist, pursuits. I digress. Okay. England, super imperialist. That is so deeply ingrained that we see how it plays out in football. So the Premier League, top flight football in England, whatever it's changed names, was the last league of the big ones, right, in Europe, to allow foreigners to play in their leagues. They still don't really export players. It's very rare that an English player will play outside of England. That's also that mentality that they have, that they're the best league in the world, that why would they go anywhere else, because like that's the best league, all that stuff, right? And that's still like so deeply ingrained up until like the 90s, the early 2000s. Okay, like British football was shit. They called themselves the best, but it was like long balls and zero vibes, literally. Like maybe that's the name of the episode, long balls and zero vibes. That's what British football was. I grew up not watching British football at all. It wasn't a league that was watched in my house. It wasn't a league that was glorified in my house, in my circles, because of this like imperialist idea that they always thought they were the best league in the world, but their league was shit, worldwide comparatively, obviously. And Galliano said this, and we all say this in the Global South, right? Like the Brits may have invented football, and that's even questionable. But let's say, we go with that narrative. The Brits invented football, but we perfected it. We being the Global South, right? Especially South America, the Southern Cone. So with that said, they were like the delusional, people that believed their league was the best in the world, but everywhere else in the world, they were like, your league ain't shit, right? Like no vibes, nothing beautiful about it. And it wasn't until they started to open up to, foreigners, South Americans, which they still were like really late on. Even Spaniards at that point was like revolutionary. African players started to like more and more recently. And that's when Premier League really earned the title of being a top league in the world, right? Imperialism had them in a chokehold to such an extent that they did not really compete in that regard. When like historically, British teams are a disaster in Champions League, right? And in these continental competitions, because the quality of their league was shit for so long. And it's not until you allow foreign players. What parallel can we draw to real society, class? Okay, here we are. We're going to school. Okay. So now you've got, the league opens up a bit. Now you've got like amazing players coming in from outside, and that's when your league becomes great. So British football, to me, the Premier League is like the newest league, I would say, that I associate with, that I watch. But I have to also recognize that it is one of the few leagues that isn't dominated by just two teams at the top. And that's admirable. And that does not mean that they're not they don't do, because we know Manchester City does, like, they were the first to do like the dirty oil money thing, and like, but they're not the only, and now we're seeing it happen. So, but you can really truly talk about, at the very least, a top 4, and even a top 6, even though that's a little more, that's a little more idealistic, but still, like, you see movement like you don't see in many other leagues in the world. Even the top leagues, it's the top 2, and some of them it's the top 1, right? Looking at you, league and Bundes. But point being, there's cool things about Premier League. There's also a lot to critique about Premier League. And with that said, I watch that league the most critically, because that's not a league that's not a league, and Manchester United is not a team that I was born into like my other teams. So it's very interesting to be able to watch it from that critical standpoint, without that, like, religious, like, obsession, like fandom that, Galliano, in the Galliano sense of what football means to many of us who were born with it. And that was another episode of Real Francamente. Thank you so much for listening. I'm literally obsessed with y'all. Please share with your like-minded friends. Follow us on socials at Real Francamente. Leave likes, comments. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Leave comments there too, ratings, reviews, all of that stuff, only if you love us, of course. Check out our website for more content, www.realfrancamente.com. We will catch you on the next one. And as always, buy us your football content.